Well, good afternoon. It's another wonderful event here at the National Book Festival. I try to come every year and meet authors and just have fun. I brought my son, who's 6 years old, with me, and he's playing in the tents while his dad says a few words here. I came this year because of a foreword I wrote for an extraordinary new book that I truly hope gets a lot of attention and that people hear, listening, acquire, and that C-SPAN viewers watching buy, because it's really an important slice of America in the 20th century. The book is Soul of a People. The WPA Writers Project Uncovers Depression America, written by David A. Taylor, and it's also, with the Smithsonian Channel, a major documentary that's available right now. When I was a young man, I grew up in Ohio, and we used to take our 24-foot Coachman trailer and go all over the United States, visiting national parks and monuments and libraries, and we would use WPA guidebooks. My father started collecting them, and I've subsequently collected them. I now own 197 of the WPA guidebooks, and so it was in that spirit that I'm such a fan of what these writers did. The fact that during the Depression, you had people as talented as Nelson Algren and Conrad Aiken, Saul Bellow and Ralph Ellison, Zora Neale Hurston and Claude McKay, Kenneth Patchen and Kenneth Rexrock, Harold Rosenberg and Studs Terkel, Margaret Walker and Richard Wright and Frank Yerby, and on, great American writers that in order to survive the ravages of the Great Depression got hired by the New Deal and its Writers Project, which was created in 1935 and was such an instrumental part of the Works Progress Administration. And many of these people went on to become the titans of literature in the 20th century. All of this is covered in the Soul of People. It really makes you appreciate what we can do. And you wonder now we're hearing about newspapers closing and journalists unemployed. You're hearing about fiction writers unable to get contracts, trying to find new ways that writers can survive. And this was a genius idea because they were able to document our deserts, our oceans, our forests, our hamlets, our villages, and the individual quirks and personalities of America's hamlets and cities. The WPA guides are monuments in themselves to the United States. I hope you've all read them or collect them and cherish them, and certainly every library in America should try to get an original or a reprint if possible, because it's hard to think of the Library of America without these books. Now we have a great guide to these books, and that's David A. Taylor, author of The Soul of a People, the WPA Writers Project Uncovers Depression America. He's going to say some words, and then we'll both open it up for a Q&A.
Thanks, Doug, and thanks for both being a part of this. This is a wonderful event, and it's very sort of gratifying to be able to talk about the Writers Project and its contribution to American culture here at such a demonstration of that culture. I want to thank the Library of Congress, particularly John Cole and the Center for the Book and the American Folklife Center for all its work, both in giving such a storehouse for us to work on for the book and for the film, and for this great venue here today of celebration of reading and of American expression. I also want to thank Doug for sort of expressing that interest that so many people have. In a way, there's been a subculture about the WPA books, that people have used the WPA guides to the states for years and years, and really now is an opportunity to throw that open to many more people. Now the Library of Congress has ways of engaging that for anybody who has an internet connection can access all these life histories that the WPA writers took, down, and the WPA guides themselves are available, as Doug said, in any library. Most public libraries have the WPA guides. You can also find them online. So I just want to make 2 quick points about that time period, about that project that I feel is important. And one is that the Writers' Project really was probably the most democratic, most inclusive experiment in reading and writing that we've probably had. It was created out of need, out of a desperation of the Depression, but its inclusiveness made a wider tent, a bigger tent for American expression. The title of the book and the film, Soul of a People, comes from Mark Twain, actually, and back in the 1890s, Twain he became irritated by travelogue writers, particularly from elsewhere, who would come and spend a few weeks going across the country and then write up what they saw and publish it as the definitive view of America. And so Twain's response was that the only way you could get a sense of America, he saw all the contradictions of, from both regional and class and all these different voices. And he said the only way you could get a sense of America was to have 1,000 writers from all different backgrounds, all different ethnic backgrounds, religions, social and economic backgrounds, and get them to write about their sense of the world, their sense of America at their space in their life. And that's how you'd get the soul of a people. Well, 40 years after that, it took basically a national emergency for some sense of that vision to come to pass. And the Federal Writers' Project was created in response to the Depression. It was part of this large Works Progress administration that, for the most part, people remember for the dams and schools and buildings that were created, infrastructure that was created to get people back to work. But a small part of it consisted of the arts projects and art, music, and the Writers' Project, which did put together these great guidebooks that also interviewed people from all walks of life. And so you have, and the qualifications for becoming a writer were looser. You didn't have to have published publication credits to get on the WPA Writers' Project. And so that opened the door. In fact, you had to be on emergency relief. You had to need the job. And so that opened the door for out-of-work journalists, for former school teachers, fresh college grads, to somehow use their skills that they had and just in being able to use a typewriter and to research their hometown to get down for the guidebooks, for a sense of documenting America. Not only books, but also they created a division called the Folklore Division that got down culture that didn't get on the page. And that's where you get the genius of someone like Zora Neale Hurston, who is a trained anthropologist, a trained folklore researcher, going into juke joints and going into turpentine camps and interviewing people, recording their songs, their stories, the stories they tell each other to keep their spirits up, to get the dark and the light of life. So you're not just getting a Chamber of Commerce view of America in the guidebooks, you're getting all the struggles that people go through too, and that's that was the mandate that the Writers' Project directors established, and with such an inclusive range of people involved. Zora Neale Hurston, people who did not consider, she was a veteran writer of the Harlem Renaissance, but you get people like Ralph Ellison, who had not considered himself a writer, who was a music student, who just took the job basically to keep body and soul together, but he was then out on the streets of Harlem listening to people's stories and capturing them, getting his ear tuned as a writer and fascinated by the history that he was learning and seeing that he wasn't at the margins of American experience, that others that he was talking to were really in the mainstream of what American history was about, a new American history. So I'll just read very briefly from this view of American history that was so inclusive, was a surprise to so many people that the initial reviewers, it created controversy, it created some sense of scandal. There was the sense that some of these perceptions were un-American. But there was also just a surprise among academics. One review in the New Republic, Robert Cantwell wrote, "The America that's emerging from the Writers' Project books is like nothing we've ever seen. Nothing in our academic histories prepares you for it. The guides are a vast catalog of secret rooms,